So yeah, I'm Alan Goodrich. I've got about 35 years in financial services technology. And originally, as Sarah said, this session was going to be unlocking AI and FiDA and open finance. And today, as often happens when you get to the last block, a lot of what we might have talked about has already been talked about. So, I don't think we need to repeat again why real-time integrated data is board critical, why the legacy and siloed systems represent a structured risk. Our predecessors on this stage have already done a really good job of why there is a strong boardroom case for core modernization. So I'm not going to dwell on that. The other thing is that, I've been in the industry a long time, and we've heard a lot today about maybe doing some radical thinking and some, even in Gail's presentation, how other parts of the world are thinking maybe more radically than we are here in Europe. But unfortunately, bankers, we're naturally quite conservative and not great risk takers. And we generally move quite slowly. So just to see if the audience is still awake, I have a question for the audience. Because for me, digital transformation of financial services happened with the first ATM. Does anyone know when and where the first ATM was installed? Anyone in the room? No, there's one hand over there, was there? No, it's just someone drinking. So it was actually 1967 in London by Barclays Bank. By the time FiDA comes into force, hopefully in 2027, it will have taken 60 years to go from the first ATM to open financial services. That's not really very good, is it? So unlocking AI and FiDA and open financial service is really important. But and having seen the presentation and spoken to Georg in preparation for this, his experience around the world is really, I think, what's going to be of interest for us. In Europe, we're very good at navel gazing, even individually as a country, but then also as Europeans, we look at ourselves and we look at regulation, and we are slow to move. So my first question to you and want to talk to you about is really to maybe expand a bit more on your experience from other geographies. What are the open financial services use cases that you've seen that really work? Maybe the ones that are not so workable either. How the regulation is different in different jurisdictions to support what the banks want to do. And also, as you mentioned, I think, the European banks have really pushed back quite hard against FiDA. Yeah. And one of the arguments they've given is that there isn't market demand. Now, there will be market demand if there are use cases. So I would like you to expand maybe a little bit on the regulation in different jurisdictions and what is going to generate the market demand in Europe. Maybe talking to the app, as you did.
So then, is there two components to making open finance successful? The regulation needs to be there, and the banks need to be excited to drive forward the innovation in that field. And there are examples actually where one or the other failed. For example, with PSD2, the truth is a lot of the innovation in open finance that should be possible is already today possible via PSD2. The problem is that, for example, the APIs weren't clearly defined, and most banks deliberately made these APIs bad. So the problem is here, if the connection is bad and you can't rely on them, you're constantly being logged out, it's just not very practical. So the examples that I named before, that you're essentially using as a primary account an app and using all the banks through that app, isn't feasible if that connection isn't reliable. FiDA solves that. So far, Latin America is by far the best open finance regulations. It's different in each market, but as I mentioned, Brazil and Mexico are certainly the most advanced, and then a few other countries like Chile copied parts of it. An example of where it failed is Australia. Australia has also on paper very advanced open finance regulations, but the banks pushed hard against it, and essentially they wrecked it. They literally stops the innovation in its track, and because the experience was so terrible, there was very little innovation that happened there. In Europe, we saw something similar, maybe not as extreme, but we had a few fintechs that wanted to become consolidators, but the truth is it never took off and it never really brought innovation that it was expected. I think there are a couple of use cases that already work now very well, but I think FiDA will actually change that quite a lot. And I always say we need to focus on customer needs. What are the use cases? Very important, wealth management. Any bank that has any meaningful business in wealth management should see open finance as an opportunity. You currently do not have full oversight what your customer owns. You know the accounts, the deposits of your customer and how much you have in AUM, but you do not know what the person has otherwise. The truth is, if you knew that, you could offer that person much better solutions. And the customer themselves, they would have an interest to having a full transparency over their own net worth as well. So they would be absolutely willing to connect your bank to all the other banks that that person might have and give you a full transparency. They might not do it with everyone, but with the primary account, they would do that. I think there's a really nice app in Europe called Wealth API that essentially enables that already. There are certain portfolio trackers that really neatly connect everything, and it's really beautiful. And I was wondering, why the hell does no bank offer that? Like, I'm serious, like, why? There are existing portfolio trackers there. In my opinion, either as a bank, either partner with one of those portfolio trackers, white label them into your app, buy one of them, or build it yourself, but you gotta have a portfolio tracker in your app. It's almost embarrassing to not have one. The other aspect is better insurance policies, better loans. Essentially, I want to get the best offers out there. I can tell you, like, for all those that have ever been self-employed in your life, if you, as a person that owns, if someone owns several companies, you might own real estate, you might own a lot, but suddenly you have troubles to get a loan because you can't prove that you have an income. It's like, I'm sorry, but if a bank has full transparency over the net revenues and overall assets, suddenly things change. But because in the West we very much believe, put so much trust into the pay slips, it's sometimes funny. It's really funny that I know a lot of entrepreneurs because I invest into startups. So a lot of very successful entrepreneurs struggle to get a mortgage, for example. In my opinion, open finance can really solve that, because if you consolidate all the net assets of a person, suddenly it's much easier to justify a mortgage.
I mean, you've really hit some strong points there. And today we've heard from a number of banks that are talking about they either started already some kind of transformation or are about to start a transformation. And I mean, you're advising also around the world financial services institutions how to do this. So, I mean, presumably you've kind of seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of what can go right and what can go wrong. So, I mean, what would your advice be to some of the banks that we've heard here and who are planning to do their transformation, to get ready for FiDA, to get ready for leveraging AI? What would be your advice to them? What to avoid? What are the lessons learned?
Yeah. The number one recommendation I give to banks is to not start with technology. Don't ask, I mean, as a CEO or as an executive of a bank, don't ask your innovation department, please make an AI strategy, or please tell me what to do with open finance. Start talking to customers. And I'm not talking about a benchmarking exercise with a consulting firm. I'm talking about sit down with your customers. And this is not work for the intern in your team, that's executive work. Speak to your customers. Ask them, how do you use us as a banking app? Which other banks do you use? How do you use them? What do you like? What do you not like? If you could, I mean, depending on to whom you speak, sometimes I ask you, if you can just give me 3 wishes and we're going to change it in the banking app, what would it be? So talk to your customers. And in fact, not just talk to your customers, talk to people in general. Like when I've been talking a lot today to various people, and even random people I meet at random places. For me, it's small talk to ask. I mean, I know it's weird, but I ask people, what bank do you use, and what you like and not like about it. It's I know it feels weird to ask a stranger that I have maybe small talk in the I don't know, my neighbor in the plane, but I actually ask it a lot, and I'm so curious about it, especially when people come from other countries, and because of that, I learned just so much about it. And the reality is, the majority of banks don't do that. They hire consulting firms to do benchmarking exercises or strategy exercises, but I've actually just recently joined a project with a big bank, and they are 6 months into the project. 6 months. Hired a big consulting firm, made benchmarking exercises, big strategy. And then ask a simple question. What's the reason, what's the number one reason why someone should sign up for your banking app? Total silence. When I asked the target audience that you defined, which banks do they currently use? Do they use, I mean, in my case it was Germany, do they use Sparkassen or do they use a neobank? Total silence. When I asked, what are they disturbed by in their current banking experience? Total silence. And those are the questions you need to start with. Don't ask about technology. Technology is part of the solution. Start with the problem.
I absolutely agree. I mean, that you have to have the demand to actually come up with the business case for doing what you have to do to your technology. But I mean, there's also a fundamental assumption that when you ask your customer, what would you like to see, that you've got the technology in place that's going to support the open APIs and give them, the real-time data, etc., in place. And we discussed also this topic earlier, and it's been discussed today. There seems to be consensus that you need to have thought about your data. It has to be real-time. You have to have business processes running off that then can be optimized using AI, for example, that is also going to drive the AI engines, drive the open APIs. But you fundamentally have to have that core in place. Otherwise, asking the customer what they want is also, it's not a waste of time, but you need to have the technology to provide it. So, I mean, I think there's been consensus today that this is something that banks have to do. They have to get their technology stack in order. But maybe more than what they have to do is how best to do it. And we touched upon it in one of our earlier conversations today. So maybe, again, with your experience and your vision and advice, what would you see as the best way to move forward for a bank of a reasonable size that needs to do that deep transformation?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, one has to understand the current capabilities and where you need to become better. Transformation, I think big problem is the fragmentation of the tech infrastructure. So I think the best thing is to simplify the tech infrastructure and not move just pieces over to a new solution, but you can start with a piece, but eventually you have to move the entire system. And sometimes it's actually the best to just build something from scratch and then tear down the old thing. For the customers, it might not even feel like that. You could build an entire new tech stack, an entire new banking app on the side, and slowly move customers over. And at some point, just deprecate the entire old tech stack. And the customers might not even properly feel it. They might realize, okay, it's a new app, but you could start that app targeting only young people, and then suddenly you might rebrand, they expand the branding, and then expand the target audience. So basically, sometimes think big, but understand what you really want to achieve, and then move over the entire tech stack.
So we're over time. Can I ask him one more question? Am I allowed? Very quick. I mean, you kind of touched on it at the end of your presentation and even your question to him, actually. I mean, I think what would be really interesting to come from someone like you with of your global experience is actually with a bit of a crystal ball, what do you think banking, not banks maybe, but banking will look like in say 5 years' time? Will it have moved as fast as we hope or not?
I think some banks will become significantly larger and relevant in our lives, including becoming almost an operating system in our lives, and some banks will become completely irrelevant. So I think we will have a lot fewer banks in future, 5, 10 years from now, but those banks will become significantly more important. Some of them are going to be from the incumbent side. I think there are many very strong incumbent players. Some of them will be coming from the challenger banking side. But my hypothesis, that's maybe hypothesis number 6, I think in 10 years from now, no one is going to speak about digital banking because there will not be any other kind.
Thank you very much.